Man returns to visit his grandfather after years, but finds a tunnel under the house and everything changes. Marcus Thompson never imagined 15 years could pass so quickly. Now, at 40 years old, he drove down the dirt road leading to his grandfather's rural property, feeling the weight of guilt and regret with every kilometer traveled. What he found when he arrived was devastating. The house where he had spent so many childhood summers was completely destroyed, with the roof collapsed and the walls cracked. But what caught his attention the most was a huge hole in the center of the main room, as if the earth had swallowed part of the structure. Marcus got out of the car slowly, still processing the scene before his eyes. The wind blew through the wreckage, creating a melancholic sound that echoed across the abandoned property. He had come to settle the sale of the land, but now he wondered if there would be anything left to sell. Walking carefully through the debris, he approached the opening in the floor. At first he thought it was just a hole caused by the collapse, but something was wrong. The edges seemed too regular, too organized to be the work of chance. He grabbed the flashlight from the car and shone it into the hole. His eyes widened when he realized it wasn't just a hole, but the entrance to a hand-dug tunnel that stretched for meters under the foundation of the house. The walls were lined with wood, and there were crude steps descending into the darkness. Marcus's heart raced. Who had done that? And why? He tried to remember any conversations with his grandfather Harold about underground constructions, but nothing came to mind. The old man had always been reserved, but he had never mentioned anything like this. Gathering courage, Marcus descended the makeshift steps. The wood creaked under his feet, but it seemed solid. With each step, curiosity overcame fear. The tunnel was wider than it had seemed from above, with enough space for a person to walk upright. After a few meters, he reached a small underground room that left him speechless. The place was equipped with shelves full of canned food, blankets folded carefully, and an improvised table made from old planks. But what caught his attention the most were the documents organized in folders on the table. With trembling hands, Marcus opened the first folder. Inside, he found handwritten letters, all in the unmistakable handwriting of his grandfather Harold. The first letter was addressed to him, and the first words made him choke with emotion. "My dear grandson Marcus, if you are reading this, it means you have finally come home. I knew you would return one day, even after our last argument. I built this place during the most difficult years for our family, when we lost almost everything that mattered." Marcus had to stop reading to control the tears that began to well up. He vaguely remembered the last time he had been there 15 years ago, when he had argued with his grandfather about his decision to move to New York and never return. Back then, he was full of anger and ambition, determined to leave behind everything he considered backward and limiting. Continuing to read, he discovered that his grandfather had built that refuge during a family crisis he only vaguely recalled. The text revealed details about financial difficulties that had almost led to the loss of the property, something his parents had never fully explained. "Down here," the letter continued, "I kept not only emergency supplies, but also all the original documents for our property, including land deeds that you probably think are lost forever. I knew you would need this information one day." Marcus's pulse quickened as he explored the other folders. There were property deeds, old contracts, and even birth records of relatives he had barely known. Everything was meticulously organized and preserved. One of the more recent letters, dated just 2 years ago, made his heart tighten. "Marcus, I know you are angry with me, and perhaps you have your reasons, but I never stopped loving you or believing that one day you would understand why I made the choices I did. Everything here is rightfully yours. Use it wisely." Dear listener, if you are enjoying the story, please take a moment to like and especially subscribe to the channel. It helps us a lot as we are just starting out. Now continuing. Marcus climbed out of the tunnel with shaky legs and a heavy heart. He grabbed his phone and, after a few moments of hesitation, dialed the number he hadn't called in 3 years. On the other end of the line, his younger sister Rachel answered with evident surprise in her voice. "Marcus, what happened? Why are you calling?" "Rachel, I need you to come here, to Grandpa Harold's property. I found something important." "I'm not going anywhere with you," she replied coldly. After how you treated Grandpa in his final years, after how you abandoned our family, you have the nerve to call me asking for favors. Please, listen. I found a tunnel under the house full of documents and letters. Grandpa left all this for us. There are things about the property you need to see." Rachel laughed bitterly. "A tunnel? Seriously, Marcus? Is that the excuse you came up with to try and get the inheritance? You disappear for 15 years, you don't even show up to Grandpa's funeral, and now you appear with these wild stories." The conversation deteriorated quickly, with Rachel accusing him of being greedy, and him trying desperately to convince her he was telling the truth. In the end, she agreed to come the next day, but only to prove he was lying and to settle the matter of selling the property once and for all. That night, Marcus slept in his car parked next to the destroyed house. The sounds of the night in the countryside kept him awake for hours, but it wasn't fear that troubled him. It was the weight of memories that began to return, fragments of conversations with his grandfather that he had chosen to forget. He now remembered how the old man always insisted on the importance of family and land. "These walls have sheltered 4 generations of our family, Marcus," he used to say. "It's not just wood and brick. They are roots. They are stories. They are dreams." At the time, Marcus found all of that corny and outdated. He wanted the big city, professional success, modern life. He didn't want to be stuck in that simple life his grandfather valued so much. Their final fight had happened exactly because of that, when his grandfather tried to convince him to stay and take over the care of the property. "You will regret it, my son," were the last words his grandfather had said to him. "One day you will understand what you are leaving behind." The next day, Rachel arrived accompanied by her husband, Nathan, a practical man who worked at a law firm in Philadelphia. She was visibly irritated and determined to prove Marcus was making things up. "Where is this mysterious tunnel?" she asked sarcastically, looking at the wreckage of the house. Marcus led her to the hole in the main room. Nathan, skeptical by nature, examined the edges of the opening with professional attention. "Interesting," he murmured. "This wasn't made by the collapse. Someone actually dug this here." Rachel went down first, followed by her husband, and then Marcus. When they reached the underground room, the silence was absolute. Rachel walked slowly between the shelves, touching the cans of food and the blankets, as if she couldn't believe what she was seeing. "My God," she whispered, "he really did this." It was Nathan who found the metal box hidden behind one of the shelves. Inside were old family photographs that neither of them had seen before. The photos showed happy moments from when they were children with their grandfather, including pictures of a birthday party he had secretly organized just for them. Rachel picked up one of the photos with trembling hands. It showed her and Marcus Small sitting at the kitchen table in the upstairs house with a simple cake in front of them. Their grandfather was behind them, smiling in a way she barely remembered seeing. "Do you remember this?" she asked her brother, showing him the photo. Marcus looked closer and felt a wave of memories returning. "It was right after our parents' separation. We were devastated, and Grandpa said he was going to throw a party just for us. But how did I forget that?" "We were very young," Rachel replied softly. "And maybe we wanted to forget everything from that period." Nathan, meanwhile, was examining the documents on the table. His professional expression had changed to one of growing interest. "Guys, you need to see this," he said, holding a folder. "These are property deeds, very old ones, and there's something strange here." He opened the folder and showed a deed with several handwritten notes from their grandfather. "According to these papers, a significant portion of the land you believed was sold by your parents was never legally transferred. There are irregularities in the sale documents." Rachel stepped closer. "What does that mean?" "It means that technically you still own a much larger property than you thought. And considering this region has developed a lot in recent years, we're talking about considerable value." Marcus sat down heavily on one of the makeshift chairs. "Did Grandpa know about this?" Nathan continued, flipping through the documents. "From what I'm seeing here, not only did he know, but he had been investigating for years. There are notes, correspondence with notary offices, research. He was building a case. One of the letters explained everything in detail. Their grandfather had discovered that the original buyer used false documentation and that, Technically, the sale was never legally valid, but he needed time and resources to prove it legally, something he didn't have while struggling to keep the remaining property running. "Why did he never tell us about this?" Rachel asked, her voice choked. Marcus found the answer in a more recent letter. He says here that he tried to talk to our parents several times, but they were too caught up in their own problems. And then, when we grew up, the family was already so separated that he didn't know how to broach the subject. Nathan was shaking his head as he read. This is very well documented. With these papers, you really have a chance to recover the property, but it will be a complex legal battle." Rachel looked at her brother. "Marcus, I don't know what to say. I thought you were making all this up." "I understand," he replied. "I wouldn't believe it either if the roles were reversed." They spent hours exploring more of the tunnel and discovered there was a second, narrower passage that led to a small cellar under what used to be the kitchen. There their grandfather had stored carpentry tools and old family furniture. Among the furniture, they found a dining table that had belonged to their great-grandparents and several chairs that completed a set they thought was lost forever. Rachel ran her hands over the dark wood, vaguely remembering family dinners around that table. "He preserved everything," she murmured. "Why did he do this alone? Why didn't he ask for our help?" Marcus found the answer in one of the last letters their grandfather had written. "Because he knew we wouldn't understand. Not back then. He says he needed to do this alone like a test of love." The discovery of the furniture generated the first tension between the siblings since they had descended into the tunnel. Rachel wanted to assess the value of everything to fund a restoration of the property, while Marcus felt it would be a betrayal to sell pieces that his grandfather had so clearly preserved with such care. "Rachel, you don't understand," he argued. "He kept all this for us. Selling it would be like throwing away 15 years of his work." "And you think we can pay the legal costs to recover the land just with our feelings?" she retorted. "Be practical, Marcus. Do you have money saved for a court battle that could last years?" Nathan tried to mediate. "Guys, calm down. Let's analyze everything before making hasty decisions. There's a lot here we need to understand better." It was he who found a document that would completely change the course of the discussion. It was a letter from an old lawyer informing their grandfather about compensation for land expropriated decades ago for the construction of a highway. "Guys," Nathan said, with growing excitement in his voice, "are you seeing this? Grandpa never claimed a compensation he was entitled to, and according to the calculations here, adjusted for inflation, it would be a very substantial amount today." Rachel took the letter from her husband's hands. "But this was so many years ago. Would it still be valid?" "Legally, yes, especially if the amount was never paid. The direct heirs have the right to claim it." Marcus felt a mix of relief and guilt. "So maybe we don't need to sell the furniture." But Nathan made a face. "There's a problem, guys. Look at the date on this letter. If I'm right about the legal deadlines, you have very little time to make the claim, maybe just a few weeks." The atmosphere in the tunnel changed instantly. What had been an exciting discovery had turned into a race against time. They would need to act quickly, and that meant making difficult decisions about the future of the property and the family. "We need to go up and discuss this calmly," Rachel said. "Too much is happening too fast." When they left the tunnel, the sun was setting, painting the wreckage of the house with golden hues. The three sat on the steps of the destroyed porch, each lost in their own thoughts. "Rachel," Marcus began hesitantly, "I want you to know that I regret disappearing like that. I shouldn't have abandoned you." She looked at him for a long moment before answering. "Marcus, I also have things to apologize for. After Grandpa got sick, I also wasn't the granddaughter he deserved." "What do you mean?" Rachel sighed deeply. "I visited him sometimes, in recent years, but I asked him not to tell you because I was ashamed of how our family had disintegrated, ashamed of not being able to fix everything myself." "You visited him?" Marcus asked, surprised. "Not as much as I should have. And every time I left, he asked about you. If you were well, if you were happy in New York, if you would ever come home." Marcus felt his chest tighten. "What did you say?" "I lied. I said you were fine, that you'd come back one day. I didn't have the courage to tell him you had said you never wanted to see this place again. Nathan, who had been quiet, finally spoke. Guys, I know I'm not family, but can I give an opinion? I think you're losing focus. What's important isn't what happened in the past. It's what you're going to do with this opportunity your grandfather created. Rachel agreed with a nod. Nathan is right, but we still haven't decided if we're going to proceed with the legal claims. It's very risky. How is it risky? Marcus asked. Nathan explained. Property lawsuits are complicated. You're going to face people who currently live on these lands, who legitimately believe they are the owners. It will be an expensive, lengthy, and emotionally draining battle. And if we lose? If you lose, you'll have spent a lot of money on lawyers and will still be left with a destroyed property. The conversation was interrupted by the sound of a car approaching. It was an elderly woman who stopped upon seeing the three sitting among the wreckage. Are you from Mr. Harold's family? She asked, getting out of the car. We're his grandchildren, Rachel answered. And you are? I'm Mrs. Dorothy. I live on the farm next door. I knew your grandfather well. I'm very sorry for your loss. Marcus stood up. Thank you very much, Mrs. Dorothy. Did you know about this hole here? The old woman smiled. Yes, I did. Your grandfather was always talking about a secret project he was working on. He said he was preparing something very special for his grandchildren. Rachel stepped closer. Did he ever mention anything specific? Well, dear, your grandfather was a very private man, but in recent years he had been asking for my help to research some things at the city library. Old documents, property records. I didn't understand much, but I helped as I could. Nathan was immediately interested. What kind of documents? Old deeds, registry office records, things like that. He said he was trying to better understand the history of the family's property. He would spend hours reading old papers. Marcus and Rachel exchanged meaningful looks. Their grandfather had indeed prepared meticulously for this moment. Mrs. Dorothy continued. He talked about you two a lot, you know. Said his grandchildren were good people, but were lost in their own lives. That one day they would need something to remind them of where they came from. Dear listener, if you're enjoying the story, please take a moment to like and especially subscribe to the channel. It really helps us who are just starting out. Now continuing. These words touched the two siblings deeply. After Mrs. Dorothy left, they returned to the tunnel to continue exploring the documents. Nathan had brought a better flashlight, and they could read more clearly. Among the papers, they found something that would completely change their perception of their grandfather. It was a small diary where he had documented the entire process of building the underground refuge. The first entry was from 5 years ago, right after the loss of their grandmother. Susan passed today. The house is too quiet without her. I don't know how I'll go on alone, but I know I need to leave something important for Marcus and Rachel. They will need me one day, even if they don't know it now. The following entries revealed the meticulous planning of the project. Their grandfather described every tool he used, every problem encountered during the excavation, every item he decided to preserve in the tunnel. Today I managed to excavate another half-meter. My hands are sore, but I can't stop. This isn't just to preserve documents. It's to preserve our history, our family, even if they don't understand now. Rachel had to stop reading several times, too emotional to continue. Marcus, meanwhile, read in silence, absorbing every word as if they were his grandfather's last messages. One particularly touching entry said, Marcus called today. He didn't speak to me, but Rachel told me he's doing well in New York. She doesn't know, but I overheard when she told someone on the phone that he never wants to come back here. My heart ached, but I understand. Sometimes we need to distance ourselves to understand the value of what we left behind. He knew, Marcus murmured. He always knew how I felt. Nathan, while organizing the legal documents, made an important discovery. Guys, you need to see this. There's correspondence here with a law office about compensation for the expropriated lands. It seems the original lawyer has already passed away, but his son took over the business. Rachel looked at the paper. Attorney Gregory Mitchell, I know this name. You do? He's a lawyer here in the region, has a good reputation. If the records still exist, maybe we can talk to him. Marcus hesitated. But that means we'll have to decide if we really want to go through with all this. Once we start the legal process, there's no turning back. Marcus, don't you want to recover what Grandpa preserved for us? It's not that, Rachel. It's just... I feel guilty. I abandoned him. I wasn't there when he needed me. Do I even deserve to benefit from something he built alone? Nathan intervened. Can I offer an outside perspective? You're punishing yourselves for past mistakes instead of honoring the future he wanted to create for you. What do you mean? Look around. Look at everything he did. He didn't build this as punishment or to create guilt. He built it as a gift, as an opportunity for you to reconnect. Rachel touched her brother's arm. Nathan is right. Grandpa wasn't resentful. He was hopeful. That night they decided to camp on the property. Nathan had brought tents, and they set up a small campsite next to the destroyed house. It was strange to be there, with the secret tunnel right beneath them, surrounded by all those memories and possibilities. As they built a simple campfire to warm themselves, Rachel asked a question that had been bothering her. Marcus, why did you really leave? What was the real reason? He was silent for a moment, poking the embers with a stick. I was afraid. Afraid of what? Afraid of not being good enough. Afraid of disappointing Grandpa like our parents did. Afraid of getting stuck in a life I thought was too small for my dreams. Rachel laughed softly. Funny. I stayed because I was afraid to leave, afraid to try something new and fail. And now, how do you feel about the possibility of stirring all this up? She looked at the destroyed house, illuminated by the firelight. Scared, but also excited. For the first time in years, I feel like there's a possibility of something bigger. Nathan, who was listening to the conversation, contributed. You know what else impresses me about all this? The organization. Your grandfather didn't just preserve documents and objects. He created a script, a path for you to follow. How so? The letters are numbered. The documents are organized in order of importance. There are even instructions on how to proceed with each legal situation. He literally created a manual on how to recover the family's heritage. The next day, they went to town to look for the lawyer Gregory Mitchell. The office was in an old house downtown, with signs indicating the firm had existed for over 40 years. Attorney Gregory was a man of about 50, with graying hair and a posture that inspired confidence. When they explained who they were and what they had found, he showed genuine interest. I remember your grandfather well, he said. My father spoke of him with respect. Harold Thompson was known in the region as a man of integrity and determination. Do you still have the records for the compensation case? Nathan asked. I do. And you're right to be concerned about the deadline. According to the legislation, you have only 3 weeks to file the formal claim. Rachel leaned forward. And what about the issue of the lands sold illegally? Attorney Gregory examined the documents they had brought. This is very well substantiated. Your grandfather really did impressive investigative work. With this documentation, you have a real chance of overturning that sale. What would the process be? Marcus asked. Complex and lengthy, but not impossible. The problem is that the family that currently owns the land also has rights. They bought in good faith, paid taxes for years, made improvements. It won't be a simple decision for a judge. Nathan crossed his arms. And the costs? High. We're talking about legal fees, expert assessments, court costs, easily in the tens of thousands of dollars. Marcus felt his stomach sink. What if we lose? If you lose, you'll have spent a lot of money and still be left without the property. But if you win... Attorney Gregory paused to consult some papers. We're talking about a property that today is worth at least 15 times more than it was when it was sold irregularly. The three left the office in silence, processing the information. It was a real opportunity, but also an enormous risk. What do you think? Rachel asked when they got to the car. Marcus sighed. I think we need to talk to the people who currently live on the land. Before starting a legal war, maybe we can find a solution that works for everyone. Are you talking about a settlement? I'm talking about doing the right thing. Grandpa always said the best deals are those where everyone comes out ahead. Nathan approved with a nod. It's a smart approach, and cheaper too. They returned to the property determined to research more about the families currently living on the land in question. To their surprise, they discovered the main family was well known in the area, the Parkers, who had turned part of the land into a small organic farm. When they looked for information about them in town, they discovered that Mr. William Parker and Mrs. Susan were respected people in the community, known for their honesty and hard work. This complicated things emotionally, but perhaps offered an opportunity for a creative solution. "How do you think we should approach them?" Rachel asked. Marcus thought for a moment. "With honesty. We'll tell the whole truth and see if we can find a solution that benefits everyone." The next day, they visited the Parker family. Mr. William was a man in his 60s with calloused hands and a dignified posture. When they explained the situation, he listened attentively, without showing anger or defensiveness. "Are you sure the documents are genuine?" he asked. "Yes, sir. Our attorney confirmed it," Nathan replied. Mrs. Susan, a kind woman in her 50s, served coffee as they talked. "Your grandfather was a good man. He was always cordial to us when we met him in town." "And now?" Mr. William asked. "Are you going to take our home from us?" Marcus stepped forward. "That's not what we want, Mr. William. We came here because we believe there might be a solution that works for all of us." "What kind of solution?" Rachel, who had been thinking of the idea during the trip, explained. "What if, instead of a legal battle, we created a partnership? You know the land, you know how to farm. We have the legal documents and resources to invest." Mr. William seemed intrigued. "Go on." "We're thinking of creating something bigger, a project that honors our grandfather's memory and also recognizes all the work you've already done here," Nathan added. "Legally, we could structure a partnership or a usage agreement that protects everyone's rights." Mrs. Susan looked at her husband. "William, remember what your Harold used to say? That this land was too big for just one family but too small for fighting." The conversation stretched on for several hours. Gradually, an idea began to take shape, to create a community project that combined the Parkers' agricultural production with the historical preservation that Marcus and Rachel wanted to implement. "And the ruined house?" Mr. William asked. "What would you do with it?" Marcus looked at Rachel before answering. "We want to restore it, not just the house, but also preserve the tunnel our grandfather built. Maybe create a space that tells the story of the region's pioneer families, like a museum. Not exactly a museum, more like a community center where people can learn about local history and also about sustainable agriculture." The idea was ambitious, but everyone felt there was something special about it. It would be a way to honor the past while building something new for the future. Mr. William finally smiled. "You know what? I think your grandfather would have liked this idea." In the following days, they developed the proposal in more detail. Nathan drafted the necessary legal documents, while Marcus and Rachel worked on the restoration project. The Parkers contributed practical knowledge about the land and the local community. The idea gained momentum when Mrs. Dorothy, the grandfather's neighbor, offered to contribute her own memories and historical documents of the region. Soon, other old families in the area began to show interest in the project. "It's becoming something bigger than we imagined," Rachel commented one night as they reviewed the plans. "Grandpa always said the best things grow slowly," Marcus replied. Nathan raised an important point. "What about the compensation for the expropriated land? Do you still want to go through with it?" "Yes," Marcus said without hesitation. "But now we know exactly what we're going to use that money for." The compensation claim process was smoother than they expected. Attorney Gregory had done an excellent job preparing the documentation, and the government quickly recognized the legitimacy of the request. When the compensation amount was announced, everyone was surprised. It was substantially higher than they had estimated, enough not only for the community project, but also to establish a permanent maintenance fund. "Grandpa knew," Rachel said, reading one of his letters again. "Look here. This money is not for you to spend on yourselves. It's to invest in the future of the community that has welcomed us for so many generations." The restoration of the house began 3 months later. They hired local artisans, some of whom had worked with the grandfather on old projects. The tunnel was carefully preserved and transformed into part of the site's historical experience. Marcus decided to move from New York back to the region. 15 years was long enough away from home, he said to Rachel. I want to be here to see this project grow. Rachel, in turn, discovered an unexpected passion for historical preservation and enrolled in a distance learning cultural management course. I never thought I'd be interested in this, but there's something very rewarding about preserving stories. During the restoration process, they made more surprising discoveries. Under the kitchen floorboards, they found a second, smaller hiding place with old coins and family jewels that had been given up for lost decades ago. It's as if Grandpa left clues everywhere, Marcus commented. Mrs. Susan Parker had a theory. Your grandfather was very meticulous. I think he wanted you to experience the discovery, to understand the value of things little by little. The community project began to attract attention from nearby universities. History and archaeology students began visiting the site, interested both in the tunnel and in the historical documentation the grandfather had preserved. A professor from Philadelphia University, Dr. Robert Anderson, offered academic support to the project. This kind of domestic historical preservation is rare and valuable, he explained. You have something very special here. With the university's support, they gained access to additional resources to digitize all the documents found in the tunnel, creating a historical archive that would benefit researchers for generations. Dear listener, if you're enjoying the story, please take a moment to like and especially subscribe to the channel. It really helps us who are just starting out. Now continuing, the first phase of the restoration was completed exactly 1 year after the discovery of the tunnel. The house, while maintaining its original structure, now had modern facilities that allowed it to be used as a community center. The tunnel had been transformed into an immersive historical experience where visitors could understand how Grandfather had preserved the history of the family and the region. The personal letters were preserved in special frames, allowing people to read his words of love and dedication. For the inauguration, they organized a party that brought together not only family and close friends, but the entire local community. It was a celebration Grandfather would have loved, simple, warm, and focused on bringing people together. During the party, Marcus found a moment to be alone in the tunnel where it had all begun. He sat in the same chair where he had read the first letter from Grandfather a year ago. But now his feelings were completely different. There was no more guilt or regret. There was gratitude, purpose, and a deep connection to his roots that he had never imagined possible. Rachel found him there a few minutes later, thinking about what? About how Grandpa was right about everything. I needed to step away to understand the value of what he was offering. And now? Now I know this isn't just about our family. It's about all the families that came before us and all that will come after. They went up together to join the party, where Mr. William was telling stories about the region to a group of fascinated children. Mrs. Susan was coordinating the buffet with traditional dishes from the area, and Nathan was documenting everything with photos that would be added to the historical archive. Attorney Gregory was present, along with Dr. Robert Anderson and several other community members. Everyone seemed genuinely happy to be part of something that honored the past while building a positive future. When it was time for speeches, Marcus stood up to speak on behalf of the family. A year ago, I came here to sell a ruined property and sever the last tie connecting me to this land. Instead, I discovered that my grandfather had built a bridge between the past and the future, hoping that one day I would be brave enough to cross it. He paused, emotional. This place now belongs to all of us. It's a reminder that our roots strengthen us. Our stories connect us, and our dreams are best realized when they are shared. Rachel also spoke, specifically thanking the Parker family for their openness in turning what could have been a legal dispute into a creative partnership. You taught us that the true wealth of the land is not in owning it, but in caring for it for the next generations. As the evening wore on, people gradually dispersed, but many remained chatting in small groups, clearly reluctant to leave that special atmosphere. Mrs. Dorothy, now over 70, approached Marcus before leaving. Your grandfather would be very proud, she said, squeezing his hand with surprising strength. You think so? I'm sure. Do you know what his dream was? To see you two working together again. He always said that family is like a tree. It may seem like the branches grow in different directions, but the roots always remain connected. After the party, the reunited family, Marcus, Rachel, Nathan, and now also the Parkers, who had become an integral part of the project, sat on the restored porch to reflect on what they had accomplished. "I still can't believe we did it," Rachel said, looking at the property lit by the full moon. "This was just the beginning," Mr. William observed. "Now comes the hardest part, making all this work long-term." Marcus agreed. "But we have something many projects don't, a solid foundation built on real relationships and a purpose that goes beyond profit." Nathan, ever practical, pulled out a folder of documents. "Speaking of long-term, we need to discuss the permanent legal structure. We want to ensure this project continues even after all of us are gone." They spent the next few hours drafting a governance plan that would ensure the project's continuity through the generations. It was complex, but Nathan had learned a lot about community law that year and was confident they could create something lasting. In the following months, the community center began to establish itself as a landmark in the region. Local schools organized educational visits, families came for special events, and researchers kept uncovering fascinating aspects of local history. One of the most exciting developments was when a family from New York discovered, through the project's digital archive, that their ancestors had been pioneers in the same region. They made contact, offering documents and photographs that perfectly complemented the existing collection. "It's amazing how one story pulls other stories out," Rachel commented, organizing the new materials. Dr. Robert Anderson was especially excited. "You've inadvertently created a model for community historical preservation that can be replicated in other regions. Universities from other states are already asking about how to implement similar projects." The success brought new opportunities, but also new challenges. They received proposals from investors interested in expanding the project commercially, television offers to document the history, and even invitations to speak at conferences on community development. "How do we decide what to accept and what to refuse?" Rachel asked during a planning meeting. Marcus looked at the portrait of his grandfather they had placed on the main wall. "We ask what Grandpa would do. If an opportunity honors his vision and benefits the community, we consider it. If it's just about money or exposure, we pass." This philosophy guided them through the various proposals they received. They accepted partnerships with universities and educational organizations, but refused commercial offers that would have changed the project's character. One of the most successful initiatives was an exchange program where young people from big cities came to spend time learning about sustainable agriculture with the Parkers, while local youth visited urban centers to broaden their educational perspectives. "Grandpa always said knowledge should flow in all directions," Marcus explained to a group of visitors from a New York university. The exchange program brought new life to the project. The urban youth learned practical skills and developed a deeper appreciation for rural life, while the local youth gained confidence and expanded aspirations for their futures. Emily Parker, the youngest daughter of Mr. William and Mrs. Susan, became one of the program coordinators. At 22, she had recently graduated in education and brought fresh energy and ideas to the project. "It's beautiful to see how the younger generations are making this their own," Nathan observed. 2 years after the opening, they received an unexpected visit. It was an elderly man who introduced himself as a distant cousin of Grandfather Harold, someone the family had lost contact with decades ago. "I learned about this project through a newspaper article," he explained. "My name is Charles Thompson, and I have some things that belong to our common great-grandfather that you might want to see." Charles had brought a collection of letters and documents dating back to the 19th century, including the original account of how the family had arrived in the region. It was an unexpected gift that further enriched the historical archive. "Did you know our great-grandfather was Irish?" Charles asked. "We had no idea," Rachel admitted. "He came to the United States with just a suitcase of clothes and a box of tools. These letters tell the whole story of building the first house on the property over 100 years ago." The discovery of the family's origins added an international dimension to the project. They managed to contact genealogists in Ireland who helped trace the complete family tree. connecting the local history with the broader narrative of Irish immigration to the United States. "It's fascinating how one story connects with another," Dr. Robert commented while reviewing the new documents. "You now have material for a complete book on the history of immigration in the region." The book idea excited Rachel. "We could write not only about our family, but about all the pioneer families of the region, make it an official historical record." Marcus supported the idea immediately. Grandpa always wanted to finish the family history he had started writing. This would be a way to complete his work on an even larger scale. They spent the following year researching and interviewing descendants of other pioneer families. The book project became a community activity, with different families contributing their own stories and documents. Mrs. Dorothy, despite her advanced age, became an inexhaustible source of stories and connections between the families. "I knew almost all the pioneers of this region," she would say with pride. "I can tell stories that aren't written anywhere." The book writing process brought to light fascinating stories of cooperation, hardships overcome, and traditions preserved through generations. Each family had its own version of the saga, of arriving and settling in the region, but all the stories intertwined into a larger narrative about community and perseverance. One of the most exciting aspects was discovering how the families had helped each other during difficult times. Stories of lending tools, sharing crops during droughts, and collaborating on building houses and roads showed a community spirit that was still alive in the region. That's what Grandpa wanted to preserve, Marcus realized during an interview session with local elders. Not just the documents and objects, but this spirit of community. The book Roots and Roots, The History of Our Region's Pioneer Families, was launched at a party that brought together over 200 people. The event was held at the community center, with exhibitions of old photographs, demonstrations of traditional agricultural techniques, and performances of regional folk music. The book launch attracted attention from regional and even national media. Journalists came from various cities to cover the story of how the discovery of a secret tunnel had transformed into a movement for historical preservation and community development. "You have inadvertently created a model for how communities can preserve their identity while adapting to the modern world," observed a journalist from the state television network. Marcus, now comfortable in his role as spokesperson for the project, responded, "The credit isn't ours. We just followed the path our grandfather laid out. He understood that the past isn't something to be left behind, but something to be integrated into the future." The success of the book led to invitations to speak at universities and conferences on rural development. Rachel, who had discovered a natural talent for public communication, began to accept some of these invitations. "It's funny," she commented to Marcus after a particularly well-received lecture at a university in Boston. "5 years ago, I barely left this region. Now I'm traveling across the country talking about our experiences." "Grandpa always said that when we do what we love, opportunities find us," Marcus replied. Nathan, in turn, had specialized in community law and was helping other regions implement similar projects. His firm now had an entire division dedicated to sustainable community development. "You realize you changed the course of my career," he joked during a family dinner. "I was a boring corporate lawyer, and now I work on projects that really make a difference in people's lives." 3 years after the book launch, they received an unexpected proposal from the state government. They wanted to turn the community center into an official model for rural historical preservation, with financial and technical support for expansion. "It's an incredible opportunity," Attorney Gregory explained during a meeting to discuss the proposal. "But it also means you'll have more responsibilities and less autonomy." The family and partners spent weeks debating the pros and cons. Government support would allow for significant expansion, but it would also bring bureaucracy and possible political interference. "What does your heart say?" Mrs. Susan asked during one of the meetings. Rachel spoke first. "My heart says we want to grow, but we don't want to lose our soul." Marcus agreed. "We need to find a way to accept the support without compromising the values that brought us here." They developed a creative counter-proposal. Instead of becoming a government institution, the community center would become a hub for a network of similar projects, maintaining its autonomy while sharing knowledge and resources with other communities. The government accepted the modified proposal, recognizing that local autonomy was an essential part of the model's success. This allowed for the creation of the network of community historical preservation centers, with the original project serving as a training and research center. In the following 2 years, 12 communities in different states implemented projects inspired by Marcus and Rachel's model. Each adapted the methodology to their own local histories and needs, but all shared the fundamental principles of historical preservation, sustainable development, and participatory governance. "It's amazing to see how Grandpa's vision has multiplied," Rachel observed during a visit to one of the new centers in rural Pennsylvania. "He wanted to preserve a family history, and it became a national movement." The growth of the network brought new challenges and opportunities. They organized annual conferences where representatives from all the centers would meet to share experiences, solve common problems, and plan collaborative initiatives. One of the most successful initiatives was the creation of a revolving fund that allowed more established centers to lend resources to new projects. It was a way to ensure financial sustainability while maintaining the spirit of cooperation that had characterized the project from the beginning. Marcus, now recognized as an expert in community development, was invited to consult on similar projects in other countries in North America. He accepted some of these opportunities, always on the condition that the knowledge gained would be freely shared with the US network. "It's important that we don't forget where we came from," he said to Rachel, before departing for a consultancy in Canada. "Every new experience should enrich our original project, not lead us away from it." During his 3-month absence in North America, Rachel took full leadership of the original center. She discovered she had administrative skills she never imagined possessing, and that she enjoyed the responsibility of making important decisions. "I think I've found my calling," she told Nathan when Marcus returned. "I always thought I needed to follow a traditional career path, but this fulfills me in a way I never expected." Nathan, who had observed her transformation over the years, wasn't surprised. "You always had leadership ability. You just needed the right opportunity to develop it." When Marcus returned from North America, he brought fresh ideas and new international contacts. He had visited similar projects in Canada, Oregon, and Colorado, each with its own creative solutions for community development challenges. "One thing I learned is that the problems are universal, but the solutions always need to be local," he reported during a team meeting. "Every community has its own personality and needs approaches that respect that identity." This philosophy influenced how they began to guide new projects for the network. Instead of providing a rigid model to be copied, they developed a flexible methodology that allowed each community to adapt the basic principles to its own circumstances. The 10th anniversary of the tunnel's discovery was marked with a celebration that lasted 3 days. Representatives from all the network's projects came to participate, transforming the small rural property into a melting pot of cultural activities, educational workshops, and discussions about the future of the movement. During the main ceremony, held exactly on the spot where Marcus had found the hole 10 years earlier, they inaugurated a permanent memorial to Grandfather Harold. It was a simple bronze sculpture showing an elderly man planting a tree with the inscription, "To those who plant trees knowing they will never sit in their shade." 10 years ago, I came here to close a chapter of my life, Marcus said in his speech. Instead, I discovered that Grandpa had only written the introduction to a much larger story. Rachel, now recognized as a community development expert and often invited to speak internationally, added, "What we've learned is that preservation isn't about keeping things the same. It's about keeping the values that truly matter alive while allowing them to adapt and grow." The celebration included the inauguration of a new research center dedicated to the study of community development methodologies. It was a modern, sustainable building constructed next to the restored historic house, symbolizing the integration between past and future that had guided the project from the beginning. Dr. Robert Anderson, now retired from the university but still active as a researcher, was appointed director of the new center. "This place has become a living laboratory for social experimentation," he observed during the inauguration. "This is where academic theory meets practical reality to create real solutions for real problems." The research center began to attract scholars from various fields: rural sociology, oral history, sustainable development, solidarity economics, and cultural anthropology. It was exactly the kind of interdisciplinary approach the project had cultivated from the start. One of the most interesting research projects was a longitudinal study on the project's economic and social impact on the region. The results, published 2 years later, showed significant improvements in education, income, social cohesion, and environmental preservation indicators. "The numbers confirm what everyone here already knew intuitively," explained the lead researcher of the study. "When communities have the autonomy to develop solutions based on their own strengths and resources, the results are sustainable and long-lasting." The scientifically proven success attracted even more international attention. Delegations from African and Asian countries came to study the model, seeking to adapt it to their own rural development realities. It's humbling and yet thrilling to know that something that began as a personal crisis is now influencing projects in Africa and Asia, Marcus reflected during an interview with foreign journalists. End of story. And so, dear listener, what did you think of this thrilling journey of Marcus and Rachel? How did Grandfather Harold's wisdom transform an abandoned property into a movement that changed lives in multiple communities? Leave in the comments which part of the story most touched your heart and share if you also have special memories of places from your childhood. If you have family stories to share, we would love to read them in the comments. Don't forget to leave your like to support our channel and, most importantly, subscribe so you don't miss other thrilling stories like this one. Thank you for joining us on this journey.